to me to start talking at that point. So thank you so much, Kevin. That was beautiful. All right. Today is Father's Day, and of course we are celebrating this holiday that for the most part is often the least celebrated holiday in America, in contrast to Mother's Day, which gets a lot of attention. So I hope you're figuring out a way today to make Father's Day meaningful for you and figuring out your own way to celebrate that and to understand the importance of these people in your life that have played such a vital role for you in various ways. And it may be that it's your actual father. It may be that another person has fulfilled that role in your life for you. And that's the beauty of this particular day, is it gives us a chance to celebrate all those in our lives that have filled those roles. And so I hope you have a great day of celebrating that, but also maybe being celebrated if you fill into that role. I thought for us in the UUCC, a great way to celebrate Father's Day would be to turn to the work of a theologian that I've really grown to love by the name of Matthew Fox. And I'll just warn you, if you try to look up information about Matthew Fox, you're going to think I'm talking about the actor Matthew Fox, that if you watch the show Lost, was the main doctor on the show. I believe his name was Matthew Shepard on the show. And so just know that there's a different Matthew Fox that I'm talking about when we talk about this particular theologian. Matthew Fox was a Catholic priest and a professor that ended up creating the Institution of Creation and Spirituality at Loyola University in Chicago. He dedicated most of his career to exploring origin myths and world religions and uncovering the hidden sacred feminine and really exploring and bringing back an awareness around the goddess imagery in religions, including his own Christianity, but really religions all around the world and spirituality all around the world. He was a priest in the Dominican order, but he was eventually dismissed from the order from the church by someone by the name of Ratzinger, who you might know, eventually became the Pope. And here was the objection that Ratzinger brought, which is the reason that Matthew Fox was dismissed from the church. One, he objected his feminist theology, and he was unwilling to condemn abortion and homosexuality. Was also named that he worked too closely with Native Americans. And then, which is an interesting kind of comment about his life, that at his Institution of Creation and Spirituality at Loyola University, which was a Catholic school, that he had an unconventional faculty that included a masseuse, a Zen Buddhist, a yoga teacher, a Hindu, and a Wiccan named Starhawk. So I just find that really interesting. And when I read that, I think Matthew Fox is really a Unitarian Universalist, and he just doesn't know it yet. So hopefully at some point in his life, he has moved to a more liberal Episcopal sect of priesthood, but eventually he's going to come home to where he belongs, as we recognize those are a lot of things that we find objectionable about ourselves. After years of working with the sacred feminine, Matthew Fox began to explore the hiddenness then of the sacred masculine, and realizing that there was, even though the masculinity had been a part of patriarchal cultures for so long, that actually sacred masculinity had not been very prevalent, and they were very much behind, because all of his work was bringing forth healthy images of the sacred feminine and healthy images of goddess experiences and imagery in religions and in cultures. And he addressed the bigger issue of what he called toxic masculinity in our culture. I don't think that we have to look far in the news today. Just turn on the news this afternoon and you will not have any difficulty finding images of toxic masculinity in our culture, and how it really, in our cultures that are patriarchal, how it really has become toxic to all that it live in our culture. So I want to give a disclaimer today that when I talk about masculinity, I'm not talking about gender. And for me, masculinity is not about gender, because I believe that gender is fluid and that none of us can be identified as just male or female. We may have a more dominant gender that manifests for us, or we may not. But for I believe, human beings, gender is fluid. So when I talk about masculinity, I'm not just talking about masculinity for men. I'm talking about masculinity in women as well, and how that toxic masculinity has really infected our entire culture. Fox believes that all humans possess this polarity of the feminine and the masculine. So he too would agree with that and argue the impact that his work has on men, and that toxicity has impacted us all. He uses 10 metaphors in a book to awaken the sacred feminine. And I want to share some of his words really quickly about how he understands the work of metaphors, because I cannot say it better than he says it here. He writes that living archetypes, in other words, jolt us with energy. These metaphors jolt us with energy so that we ourselves feel that we might burst into flame. They provide the 100,000 volts that are necessary to make cultural shifts, which today our species needs to do for its own survival. I know that working on this book has energized me in many ways I hardly expected. Archetypes, like stories, make demands on us. They are not neutral, but they are behind all music, all poetry, all stories, all energizing activities. A good artist is a fisher of archetypes, and they bring them up from below so that they hit us between the eyes and our sixth chakra in order to wake us up from sleep. An archetype rocks us. They don't arise to entertain, but to guide our actions. And only in action do we fully realize an archetype, in this case, by choosing to change our images of an outdated and a toxic masculinity. So I want to go through very briefly the 10 metaphors that he uses, and really use this as an invitation for you to explore more. I'm more than welcome, when we put the text up on the website along with the sermon, to share the book where I'm getting all of this information from Matthew Fox. And I'll also let you know that he has several YouTube links where he discusses these metaphors in depth, so you can read about them, but you can also hear him talk about and engage these metaphors. So I'm going to use the 10 metaphors that he does in the book. And these are metaphors and images, archetypes that can be useful if we focus on them to awaken a more healthy, a more vibrant, a more useful form of masculinity in our culture. The first one he names is Father Sky, which is the connection to the cosmos and the sense of awe and wonder and mystery about us. I am sure that if we are drawn to certain metaphors, then I would imagine that Dr. Edge, who's on the call, would be quite drawn to Father Sky, and has spent most of his career looking up at the stars with a sense of awe and wonder and mystery, and trying to understand this universe around us and how we, as small as we are, fit into that great cosmos. Most creation myths, Fox points out, articulate a coming together of Father Sky and Mother Earth to create life. The second image, which I think is really helpful to us, is the Green Man. And it's just simply one who sees himself as deeply interconnected to the web of existence all around him. The thrust of the Green Man is that he takes on the responsibility of being a caretaker of the earth. And as I read about this metaphor and archetype in Matthew Fox's book, I think about the great work that our green team has done and celebrate that in the work of the UUCC. A third metaphor and archetype that he uses is Icarus and Daedalus, which is a Greek myth of a father who builds wings for his son. And then as he invites him to fly, Icarus flies too close to the sun and his wings catch on fire and he falls to the earth and dies. And Fox uses this image to think about a way that we can learn the balance as we are empowered to bless others, to learn the balance of blessing and empowering while also protecting and guiding. And if you've ever been a parent or a leader at work, you know the hard work it is to know when to let go and to bless and empower, and when to give extra help and support. And Matthew Fox says this is a beautiful image about learning the balance both as the parent, but also learning the balance from Icarus's viewpoint of our own power. And if we don't learn to fly in that balance, how we can fly too far away, but fly too close to the sun. The fourth image and archetype is the hunter-gatherer, which is looking back to what is a part of our DNA in our blood, that really cultures and civilizations, for the most part, years ago, all were hunter-gatherers in society. And one of the things that he takes away from this is studying a sociologist, anthropologist friend that spent about 30 years with a hunter-gatherer community. He said that those children in that hunter-gatherer community, even though they're cut off from the modern world, they are more intelligent than just about every child in North America. And the reason being is when they go into a new area, they learn everything about everything in the land. They learn every rock. They learn every plant that is there. They know the plants that are useful as food. They know the plants that are toxic for food. They know the plants that have healing powers about them. And so they have a way of understanding with curiosity around the world. And that's the beauty of what the hunter-gatherer does, is they explore the world with curiosity. And they also have learned to channel that aggression in a useful way, which is so important. Moving to another metaphor is the metaphor he uses of spiritual warrior. And that is simply learning the helpful way to bless and use our sacred rage. I know from being a part of this community over the past few weeks and being a part of my culture around me, that there are many of us that are feeling the sacred rage within us. And the warrior is one who learns a way to use sacred rage to impact the culture. Sometimes it may look destructive, sometimes it may not, but in all ways, of course, using the image and holding the image of love as a community, figuring out a way to bless and use our sacred rage. I'm not going to say much about the next one because my 12-year-old daughter is sitting next to me, but masculine sexuality and numinous sexuality. If you want to read an interesting book about sexuality and thinking about our own sexuality as mystical and sacred, then read his chapter on numinous sexuality, and particularly his understanding of the human penis as a deity. All right, that's all I'm going to say about that. Our next one is cosmic and animal bodies, and he recognizes that as we are connected to the universe, we are both stardust in our being, but we are also animal in our being, and understanding our own bodies as a source of enlightenment and connection, which is, by the way, why he had a masseuse on faculty at Loyola for that institute, as a way of understanding and speaking to our own bodies as a resource and not just ignoring the things in our own body, which is so important that we've learned. The next, we have three more, and the next one is the blue man. And the blue man comes from the Hindu teachings of the blue pearl that is inside of all of us, that grinds with the movement of change and becomes a pearl through the compassion and creativity, just as with movement and grinding of sand, an oyster is able to create a pearl. So the blue man, and especially if you've studied Hindu philosophy and Hindu religion, then you have recognized the image of the blue man that shows up in so many places and so much artwork, and is often the image of compassion and creativity and blessing that beautiful work of compassion and creativity in our daily lives. And then the last two metaphors are really simple, and one is the fatherly heart, the metaphor and archetype of the fatherly heart, the protector and provider that we all possess in our culture, whether we have biological children or not. And one of the things I love about what he says in this chapter is that if we look around our fellow human beings around us, and we've already looked around the world around us and recognized that Mother Earth and all of our web of existence is a part of our responsibility, but he invites us to look at every face in our collection of humanity across the world and know that everyone is our responsibility. That if anyone is suffering, anyone is going without, it is our responsibility to move into our fatherly heart and provide for them and take care of them. And what a beautiful image of way to see our world around us, as to see them all as our responsibility. And then lastly is the grandfatherly heart, which is the heart of wisdom and mentor. While the parental generation, they're participating in the culture, working and keeping life going, the grandparent generation takes on the close mentoring and the teaching relationship. He points out in the study of one of his cultures that he was looking at, that when a young person turns 13, that someone from their particular tribe, their totem tribe, comes and takes them away from the family and keeps them for 3 years and spends time investing in them and teaching them. And he points out, what parent would not want their 13-year-old to be moved away for 3 years and let someone else take care of them? Maybe that's something that you would like to enjoy and participate in. So all of these metaphors and archetypes have the potential to be undermined and sabotaged by shame and aggression. Shame being a sense of not belonging, and aggression that is misused as destructive and conquering and overpowering someone else. These metaphors awaken the sacred masculine to weed out that masculine toxicity in our culture and awaken us to healthy and integrated ways of being. So what better use of metaphors at the UUCC than to call us back from shame and to remind us that we all belong, no matter who we are. To know in our hearts, not just in our minds, that we all have inherent worth and dignity. So may the UUCC always be a place that shelters from shame with the strength of our chalice bowl, and literally provides this safe community, a safe place of belonging. What better use of metaphors than to learn how to channel our aggression and energy into curiosity, open and hungry minds, power for social justice, and use of sacred rage, strength of compassion, and caretaking for all of our fellow humans and the entire web of existence around us. May the UUCC always be a place where deep ancestral energy in our blood and in our bones can be channeled into becoming agents of growth and change, using the flame of our chalice to enlighten and burn in our world around us. Let the UUCC be a place where the sacred masculine is awakened, alive, and active. Now I'll turn it over to Richard, who is going to introduce our closing song.
Our closing song is